hello there. Do you want to become the best, most evil, who's technically good if you play the later parts of the game, sorceress? Well, you're in the right place. I made this Edea Kramer cosplay in time for Katsucon 2025. Let me show you how I made it. Let's start on the helmet, shall we? So I purchased this 3D kit from the Dangerous Ladies. I really like ordering stuff from the Dangerous Ladies specifically because the layer lines on their prints are really smooth. Like if you see this print, they've kind of strategically added all of the rougher layer lines to the back, which means I don't have to sand the entire thing. We're actually going to get to sanding this piece. So like I said earlier, there aren't really many layer lines here, so I'm only really worried about the back and underside of all of the pieces since those are where all of the rougher layer lines are. So for starters, I recommend, actually I don't recommend, I'm telling you to wear a respirator when you sand pieces because you will get like microplastic dust. You can breathe that in and it's really bad for your lungs. So you need to wear a mask when you're sanding pieces, especially 3D filament. I tend to also wear eyewear and gloves just for extra safety. At least wear a mask. What I'm gonna start with here is, I can't tell you the exact grit of any of the sandpaper I'm using. I bought this like 2 years ago and I've used pretty much, it's ran through. So I have no idea what grit this is, but I'm starting with like an 80, 100 grit sandpaper. That helps to get the bulk of it down as fast as possible. Afterwards, you're gonna wanna work up in numbers. So I'm going in with a 200 and then you'll see me go in with a 300. I actually don't have any more 300 sandpaper, so I'm using this sanding block. And this one's really helps to get around the curves of the helmet as well. What you'll see me doing here is glowing in either side to side motions, or I recommend circular motions. That helps you to really buff out the shape of the helmet and get that nice clean finish. Usually what you want to do after this is wet sand it. All you would do is just wet your sandpaper or wet your prop and then sand it out and then wash it to get all of the residue away. But I'm lazy and this is a Con Crunch cosplay, so we're not doing that. So now that this is sanded, for the most part, I didn't sand all of this, I'm just worried about the back of the helmet. But now that we have this sanded, we need to take it out and prime it. What I recommend getting is Sandable Fillable Primer from Rust-Oleum. It is around $8 to $12 depending on where you buy it from. This stuff is great because it's buildable and when it's fully dry you can sand it, it sands really nicely. So what I'm doing is, because I'm too lazy to fully sand the layer lines, I'm gonna spray this on top and it helps to fill out the grooves that are left over from the layer lines. So this stuff is great. Once again, I'm gonna wear a respirator while spraying this. I don't know where my eyewear is, so I'm also not gonna wear those, but I'm wearing a respirator while I'm spraying this down. You're supposed to spray it from about 4 to 6 feet away and do it in like thin, light, multiple coats, but I'm lazy. So I'm spraying it as close to the helmet as possible to get as much buildup in the smallest amount of time possible. This is a Con Crunch cosplay and I don't have time for that. Unfortunately, it is really cold down here where I am and the fillable primer is taking a lot longer to dry than I had initially anticipated. So this is actually going to have to sit out here for multiple days until it's fully dry, unfortunately. So the other thing that I like to do is I specifically like to let my pieces dry outside if I can. It helps to remove the vapors a little bit better than leaving it inside to dry, even if it's in like a ventilated area. All right, now that these pieces are finally dry, let's go back inside and get them ready for paint. Wait a minute, something doesn't seem right. I remember there being more pieces when I brought them upstairs. So I was assembling these pieces, minding my own business, and then I quickly realized, let's see, I can't remember which one it is. She's got a little charm that hangs over somewhere over here. You remember that little tiny piece that I left outside? Yeah, I'm just realizing I think I left it outside. It was really windy and it was really cold outside, so I don't even know if it's still out there. So let's go on a little scavenger hunt. Found you, you little devil. Okay, now let's bring them inside for paint. There are two references that I used when painting this Edea Kramer helmet. There is the literal in-game design of her in like the cutscenes, and then there's also the concept art. I'm going with the video game reference because it's got more of a warm tone to it, and I love how the golds look in this color scheme. So I'm using that for more of my color scheme versus the actual concept art. You can do whatever the hell you want. I'm just telling you what my inspiration is. Once again, I'm painting this prop with, technically it's a prop. Is it a prop? Or is it like a wig? I'm calling it a helmet, but I don't actually know what it is. Anyway, so I'm using acrylic paint to paint this helmet. I always recommend if you use cheaper paints, then you can just mix it in. I either use high quality white acrylic, or you can even use gesso in this case, and it just helps to improve the performance of your paint, so you don't have to spend so much money on getting all nice paints for your project. You can just get one nice piece of paint and then mix everything in. I try to get all of my colors ready before I go to paint so that it keeps me from getting overwhelmed. Edea's helmet, in my opinion, is a little bit daunting, seeing how many pieces and colors are in her helmet. So what I recommend is starting with the base colors first. So like the purple of her helmet, the gold of that shell? I think it's a shell? I have no idea. But I would start with those pieces first, and then work through the greens and the silvers and the purples of the helmet, so it seems a little less daunting. So work from big to small, if you will. The other thing I'll add is there's a lot of references where her face is like this, and you can see the shell. But this side, I couldn't find a lot of reference images of. So my recommendation to you is to go on Google and look up Edea Kramer cosplayers. Yaya Han especially has pretty good, easy references of this side of her helmet. I've also seen a lot of DeviantArt cosplayers and Reddit, people on Reddit and DeviantArt with like the references of their Edea helmets, their finished ones, so that helps too. I will say though, I wouldn't worry too much about it. A lot of people take their own inspiration into what the helmet looks like. That little silver piece on her helmet, I've seen it painted gold, and I've seen it painted silver. The inside part, I've seen it painted red, purple, and even pink. So, it's cosplay, it's not serious. Just go with what colors you want to use, and seeing as so many people deviate so much as far as their own inspiration, I don't think it super matters what color your helmet is, especially for those smaller details. The other thing I recommend is I am painting this helmet while everything is assembled, and I actually regret doing that. I think it would probably be easier to paint all of the pieces first and then assemble them later. I was scared that they would one crack, and I just wanted to see the finished helmet together, but I don't actually recommend doing that. I think it'd probably be easier to get under the nooks and crannies of the helmet, especially if you don't assemble it. But once you are ready to assemble the piece, just remember to buff out those pieces a little bit with your sanding paper so that it has something to attach to. I use super glue for mine. You can use super glue. I've used epoxy, like the 2-part epoxy glue. That stuff works really great for cosplay. E6000 and contact cement could also work pretty well too. But if you're not working in a ventilated area, I think super glue would work pretty well. Just do be careful with the piece and buff it out beforehand. I guess to seal in all of that paint that we just did, I'm going to I'm going to set this paint. With Duraclear, you need to do 1-to-1 parts water and Duraclear in order to get the proper consistency. And then it usually takes about 3 to 4 coats before I'm happy with the product. I used 2 because I was lazy. But usually I recommend doing 3 to 4. All right, so now we need to add all of the fun little beads and gems and jewels to Edea's helmet. I have a couple of supplies. So I have some embroidery floss and a needle to feed all of the wooden beads that I have. I have some wooden beads that are from my sister's Riku cosplay, so Final Fantasy. I have some, I don't know what these are, but these things. Funnily enough, this is from I purchased this for a Mami Tomoe cosplay to kind of do their gems that they have. And I think this might look really cute like here instead of doing a wooden bead. So I might do something with this. I have some of these things. This is from my Aerith cosplay. And then I have some leftover stars and bells, which I figured the bells might be a nice auditory element for this cosplay. The only thing that I can't do today is she has a tassel that hangs on the very bottom of this side, and annoyingly enough, I used the gold tassel for my Yuna cosplay, so I don't have one, so I'm gonna have to buy one, but hopefully we can get everything else strung today. For starters, if you are using the Dangerous Ladies print for the helmet, the pieces don't come with holes in them for like the little pieces at the ends and the one at the top, so you will need to add holes in before you do them. Technically, you could just glue whatever you're using to it, but then it has the risk of falling off later, so I like the security of holes. For this specifically, I'm using a candle and a thumbtack. Now, obviously, this is fire, so be careful and make sure you don't work in an area next to anything flammable. It's easy to forget that. It seems obvious, but it's easy to forget when you're actually working with this stuff. All I am doing is taking the thumbtack to the candle to heat it up, and then I'm pushing it into the parts of the helmet that I want to puncture the hole. 3D filament is malleable when it's warm, and in this case I'm using fire or candles to puncture the holes. The other thing that I will say is that heating up any kind of plastic will exude vapors into your environment. So this is another case where I recommend wearing a respirator. Some other methods you could do is drill the holes or use a sharp screw and drill the holes in, but I used it because it was on hand and I know that it's something that's pretty accessible to a lot of people, so that's why I bring it up. Alright, so now for the fun part is assembling all of these beads. So I already had plenty of stuff to use for Edea. My colors aren't completely accurate, like there's purple beads and I'm using blue, but this is what I already had on hand, so I didn't see a need to make them, like buy them if I already had them. What I'm starting off with is sewing in these little hoop rings, jump rings, to the helmet first, and then after I am assembling all of the beads into those hoops with embroidery thread. I just wanted something with a little bit more control and strength than regular thread, which is why I'm using embroidery thread. But regular thread would probably be a little bit more seamless. I actually opted for some cute little details that aren't canon, but I thought were adorable. Like I had this gem I've been holding on to from a Mami Tomoe cosplay that we did very long time ago. So I had this random gem that I added to the forehead. And I also added these little stars and bells that I bought for my Aerith cosplay 2 years ago that I added as well, to give it a little auditory element, and because I have them, so why not use them? The last thing I did was I actually made my own tassel. You can buy them for pretty cheap at the craft store, but if you're like me and you just have horrible, awful, danger metallic thread lying around, you can also make your own tassel. There's a lot of videos on how to make it and it's really easy. I will say it's easier to make with yarn or embroidery thread. I had a little bit more trouble making it out of regular thread, but this is something I made myself, and then I hooked it onto the helmet. All right, so the hardest part of the cosplay, in my opinion, is done now. Okay, so this is the try-on of the helmet. I just contacted the seller to ship those out to me, so I don't have that connected. And the tassel needs to be on here. This is pretty much how the helmet looks, on me anyway. And if you do end up buying the 3D print from the Dangerous Ladies. The only measurements that they'll let you give is your temple to temple measurement, and I do recommend giving them that because I think that's what helps the helmet stay on my head a little bit better. Are really like hooked in and dug into my forehead, so I heated up with the steamer to push it out. But it's still a little harsh on my forehead, so I'm probably gonna put like a piece of felt here so that it's not like pushing into my forehead as much as it is right now. But I have a very defined curve on my forehead, so if yours is more flat, you probably won't have that problem. The other thing is I can't fit this hair into this wig. It's just, my hair's too thick and it's short right now. So if your hair is thicker or if your hair is longer than mine, you might have the same problem that I do. For this cosplay, we're making the crest and the little feather piece on her dress. So I don't think it's gonna be that easy to see anyway, but otherwise, I think this shit looks pretty cool. Just so you can see, there is electrical tape in here to help the threaded bead stay in this position, so this is super glued on. But what I do to wear the helmet is I wear my hair in a low bun. Technically it gets covered up by the crest so you can't see it, but that is the only way for me to get the helmet on my head, accommodating for all of this, if that makes sense. So if you have very thick, coarse hair like I do, I recommend trying that route, or maybe cornrows might work. I haven't tried that yet. But I plan on wearing this cosplay again soon, so I wonder if it works. So let's move on to her iconic dress. Let me preface this by saying I'm tired. I just spent 6 months making a Rosanot Miku cosplay, and I'm also in the process of working on my next 2 competition builds, and I'm a firm believer that you don't need to make everything. So I'm deciding to alter / modify some pre-made pieces to make this cosplay a little bit easier. Now, I was very inspired by the artistic liberties Yaya Han took for her Edea Kramer. Edea has like a very black, monochromatic, simple design, and Yaya opted for like this sparkly effect to really bring out some extra detail into this cosplay. So I took that in mind while I was searching for one online, and I found 2 pieces. The first one is this beautiful ombre Gunsax 90s prom dress that I found on Poshmark. It is beautiful. It's got that black to gray gradient just like Edea's concept art does, and it's got that nice mermaid detail. It's got boning and corsetry in the back, and I think it's perfect for this cosplay. Fortunately, I could not find any other dress even a little bit similar to this one with sleeves, so I did buy a jacket for this cosplay also. Ironically, it was another Gunsax piece. Bought this beautiful jacket. It's got the very dramatic Edwardian inspired sleeves, and I just feel like Edea would have huge sleeves to go with like the very dramatic look. So these are the 2 pieces that I bought with the intention of altering for this cosplay. So starting with the dress, this is a square neckline dress, and then I'm cutting out the new neckline that I want. She has that nice deep V plunge neckline, so I'm gonna cut that. And for the jacket, I just cut the back so that it's a little bit more hemmed, and then I'm also hemming it at the front as well so that it doesn't cover up the beautiful details of the dress. All I'm doing here is serging that jacket fabric, and then I'm hemming both the jacket and the dress. I was watching the Wild Robot with my family, so I didn't film the part where I hand sewed the snaps, but I hand sewed snaps to the jacket and to the bottom under part of the bust so that the jacket can clip to my dress and kind of seamlessly give like a one-piece look versus it being 2 separate pieces, if that makes sense. The last thing we're adding is the feather piece. I purchased this feather shawl on Etsy for about 20 bucks, 40 bucks, and all I did was hand sew it to the neckline of the jacket so that I can get that feather look that we're going for. I really wanted grackle feathers on my cosplay, so there's grackle feathers on my cosplay. The last thing is the feather shawl did kind of get rid of the puff sleeve that I wanted for this cosplay. So I'm using some leftover scraps that are ironically from some flowers that I made. And I'm using some leftover spandex to make these really ugly shoulder pads. The cool thing is that they're going to be under the jacket, so you won't ever see them. But these are just going to get hand sewn on, and that's going to bring back that dramatic sleeve look that I'm looking for the cosplay. The cool thing I really like about this method is that it gives you a reason to use your leftover scraps. Like, I know I have a lot of stash, like fabric in my stash, but it's not enough to actually use for a cosplay, so it's kind of just sitting around. So I've been using my fabric scraps to stuff like pillows and bum pads and shoulder pads and things like that, so it feels like I'm doing something good with my fabric. Okay, so let's make the crest next. I have no idea what that thing is on the back of her. I'm calling it a crest, but I don't know if it's actually called that. Canonically, that thing is very wide. It's about 4 to 6 feet long, and I'm bringing this cosplay to Katsucon, which is notorious for being the most crowded convention that at least I've seen in the Northeast area. So I figured having a canonically accurate sized crest would be a bad idea, but oh, it would look so pretty. So what I'm doing is making a more simplified version of her crest with just pieces I have at the house. I'm using these 6mm EVA foam scrap pieces that I bought in a remnant sale from Arta Wigs, and I'm drawing out the shape of a semicircle. I kind of measured how long I wanted my crest to be. I didn't want it to go any more past my shoulder so that I wouldn't smack people when I'm at the con, or worse, they smack me and ruin my crest. Afterwards, I'm mapping out the shape. There are 6, funnily enough, her crest is actually inspired by clock arms. So there's 6. So I'm also mapping out where I want all of those to go as symmetrically as I can. And then I'm cutting these out with my box cutter. This would be so much easier if I had a silver Sharpie, but I don't. So I'm suffering while cutting this stuff out because I have no idea what I'm cutting. Afterwards, I'm cutting out a generic shape for the clock hand. I'm not worried about this looking super good. I'm just kind of eyeballing the shape and making sure all of them look at least a little bit symmetrical. And then, since it's too cold outside for the contact cement to dry properly, I'm using hot glue for this piece. It's not the most secure, but I don't need this to stay forever, just for Katsucon. So I'm hot gluing all of the pieces together. This isn't attached yet. This is just, I just use masking tape. These aren't completely symmetrical, but this is for a con. I don't care. Okay. So this is just... This is the size that I'm making it. So I don't really want her crest to be canonically this wide so that I don't damage the prop. I can fit it in my suitcase, and so that it's nice and lightweight, it's taut to my body. This is going to get plastidip so that I can hold the gold color. Now, the last thing that I spray painted gold was my Sly Cooper cane 2 years ago. So I don't actually know if I have any gold paint left, but if I do, I'm gonna go ahead and spray paint this so that this can sit out to dry. But it's about 20, 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside. I don't know how long it'll take for it to dry because of how hot it is, because of how cold it is. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start working on this because I don't know, man. For like an hour and a half worth of work and a dull X-Acto knife, and for an hour and a half of work with a dull X-Acto knife and scissors, I think this looks pretty decent. Okay, so moving on, we're also going to prime this as well. If you are making anything out of EVA foam, I would highly recommend priming it with Plastidip. This is, I don't know what it's actually for, probably something automotive related, but it's a flexible primer, which is great for armor builds, especially if they go on your body and curve. This thing doesn't need to curve, but I'm still doing it for the extra insurance. And then after this, I am spraying it with this gold spray paint. Mini rant. So I actually ran out of the Rust-Oleum gold that I used for my Sly Cooper cane. So I tried to find the cheapest spray paint that I could find at Michael's. And I do not recommend this, okay? This spray paint is horrible. First off, it looks nothing like the spray paint color on the can, and secondly, despite me using Plastidip as a primer for this piece, as soon as I turn it even a little bit, it cracks. And I'm like, none of my other pieces have ever done this, so I know it's the spray paint. Anyway, buy Rust-Oleum spray paint, or buy high quality spray paint. Don't buy this crappy stuff that I bought at Michael's. Also, I bought a can, and I used up the entire can. I only sprayed 2 coats on this thing. Anyway, this thing doesn't look great, but from afar, it looks pretty decent. And once again, it's going to allow me to wear her crest to cover up the mini bun on my helmet, and I'm not gonna smack anyone at the con, which is what I'm worried about. The only thing you might notice is I didn't actually cut out any of the details in the hand of the clock arm, and that's because this is being made out of a very thin piece of EVA foam with no reinforcement. So not only did I not have the time to cut out all of these pieces, they also would have made this crest way more weaker than it already is, so I just didn't think it was a good idea. So the last thing we're doing is the beautiful fabric drape on the cape of her crest. I used some scrap organza from a curtain. I hand gathered that together, and then I'm gonna serge that. The fabric was not strong enough for the double fold hem on my serger, so I am fray checking this fabric with a candle. This only works with polyester based fabrics because it essentially melts and makes like a glue shape so that the fabric doesn't fray. This won't work on cotton, but once again, work in a well ventilated area. Do not work next to anything flammable, and don't put the fabric in the fire. You only need to drag it along lightly because it doesn't take much heat for the fabric to heat up and get the fray checking effect that you're looking for. But I find this method is really great for stuff that's not that serious, like this cape. No one's gonna see it from afar, and it allows you to cover the most ground in the fastest way. But this works great for stuff like cheap organzas like what I'm using. And then this gets hot glued to the cape. If you are curious, I hand sewed the cape to the jacket the day of the con, and that is how the crest stays on the jacket. But when I wear this cosplay again, I'm probably just going to 3D commission it and make a harness like everybody else does. All right, so we only have one more thing to talk about for this cosplay, and that is the gloves. Edea, one of my favorite designs about Edea is her beautiful, like, long claws. They are just so ethereal, and they add the very, like, eerie horror element that this character has. I think it works great too because she originally is the bad guy and the main boss in the game. So this really adds to that like villain inspiration for this cosplay or for this character concept. What most people will recommend you do is to glue nails to the gloves. That way you don't have to paint your hands every time you cosplay them. And I find that the nails are pretty secure after wearing them, so I also recommend this because it means you don't have to wear press-ons every time you cosplay this character either. So I have these random pointed nails that I bought. I personally did not think they were long enough to reference the length of her concept art and video game design, so I'm doubling these up with hot glue. You could use nail glue, but I'm using hot glue. And then I'm covering these with 2 coats of black nail polish. Afterwards, I'm adding these beautiful Swarovski crystals, rhinestones to the nails, and then I'm hot gluing them to these velvet gloves that I bought pre-made, and now our gloves are done. Okay, they're fine. Okay, never mind, I want them longer. So I just got back from the beauty supply store, and these were the longest nails that I could find on short notice. Personally, I want them longer, but if I double these up with the nails that I already have, I guess they'll suffice. The other thing that I bought is this really pretty blue glitter nail polish that I had on my nails too. I just think it's so pretty. So we're going to do this all again. Layer up the nails, black nail polish, glitter nail polish, and then I also have this blue chrome powder, that I'm dusting on the nails to give them more of a darker color scheme, since it matches the black of the color scheme for the game anyway. And then I'm also adding blue, silver, AB, turquoise, and light blue Swarovski crystals to this one as well, because I'm extra. Edea's extra, so we need extra nails. I cannot gatekeep Girl Boss and control the masses in these conditions without long nails. So she has long nails, and she has glittery, beautiful, crystally nails. Moving on. These are once again going to get hot glued to the same gloves, and now we're done with our beautiful long Edea nails. I did make some smaller ones offhand, just in case these break, but I think we'll be fine. All right, so now we are ready to conquer the masses at Katsucon. I actually have never been to Katsucon before. I didn't vlog a lot of it because of how crowded it was at Katsucon. But let me show you how I actually do the makeup for Edea Kramer. So I've already started with like this cut crease makeup that I've done. This is groundbreaking for me because I've tried to do cut creases before and it has never worked out for me. But yeah, if you want a tutorial on how I do my makeup, base makeup, I will absolutely deliver. But we're here to talk about the veins on her face. I'm starting off with this purple Juvia's Place color. Don't judge my dirty palette. And I'm using this elf, I don't know, it's elf brush. I think it's a foundation brush. And I'm slowly buffing that onto the sides of my face. This is going to be our transition color. You do really want to get this saturated, and however long you want your veins to come out, add that much to your face. Next, I'm gonna go in with this smoky gray color, and that is to help mesh the purple and the black together. So I'm going to buff this out from the halfway point to the back of my face because we don't want to cover up that purple we just did. Now we're going to use the remains of my black eyeshadow in order to really contour the sides of my face and to help add some more depth and shadow to this look. And already I'm seeing Edea come together. Great. Next, we are going to add her veins. This part looks complicated, but it is not that difficult. Just work one vein by one vein and you'll get the hang of it. I'm using this very cheap white liquid eyeliner that I bought from the beauty supply store. I bought two because I knew I need a lot of it. What we're going to do is slowly contour the concepts and ideas of veins. I'm also referencing Edea's actual veins offhand on my phone. What I found was easier to start from the very top and work your way down. If you get stressed out, you don't need to make these veins extremely accurate. You just need to draw little squiggles and curls in the veins and people will know what you're trying to do. Another thing you can also do is put the helmet on so that you can match up the veins on her helmet to the ones on her face. But here I am just kind of going with the flow, letting my inspiration take the wheel, and I'm drawing on the veins as I go. If you have a higher quality liner, you could probably just get away with one coat, but then since this is a very cheap white eyeliner, I'm using about 2 to 3 coats to build up that opacity that I'm looking for with the veins. Next, we are going to contour the veins, and this is going to make them pop way more than they already are. So I'm taking this NYX Epic Liner. I highly recommend this stuff, okay? I've been using this stuff for like 2 years and I rate it. I'm drawing underneath all of the veins to help contour them and at least make them look a little bit more 3D than the flat appearance that we have going on right now. And that is pretty much how you do the veins. See? It looks super complicated and it looks really cool, but it is not as hard as you think it is, and I highly recommend you try it, alright? I got some weird stares when I was walking to Starbucks that morning because I did my makeup before I left, and I rate it, I do. So now to do her purple lipstick. If you have a purple lipstick, this probably isn't for you. This is for people who left their purple lipstick at home or just don't own purple lipstick. I'm starting off with a red liner actually, but you don't need to do this step. I actually prefer to use black lip liner, but you want to start off with a base color. I'm using red lipstick because I do not for the life of me know where my black lipstick is, but the eyeshadow needs something to hold on to. So that's all that matters for this step, is you put something on your lip. I'm using a liquid matte lipstick. After that, we are gonna go in with the pièce de résistance, the purple eyeshadow from the same Juvia's Place palette. And I'm just going to dot that on to my lips after the lipstick is fully dry. Now I am going in with a black lip liner, and that is just to help really add some depth and dimension to my lips. And then I'm using the Shushy Glows Killer Bunny Sparkly Lip Tint to kind of add some more gradient to the inner parts of my lips. And also because I'm extra and I need glitter everywhere, all the time, everywhere. Afterwards, I'm going in with this lip gloss from Shushy Glows. If you want a really good lip gloss though, try the Glossier lip gloss. I've been using it for over 5 years, and the only reason I'm not using it today is because my sister said it was disgusting and I need to throw it out. Anyway, and boom! We are Edea Kramer. So let us go terrorize the masses at Katsucon 2025. So I debuted this cosplay Friday because I saw that the queen herself, Yaya Han, was going to be wearing her Edea Kramer. So I actually went to her booth and I got to meet her. I got one of her prints, obviously. I got the Edea Kramer one, and it says, "Let's rule the world together." Afterwards, I always go to the Final Fantasy meets whenever I can, and I did this time, and it was beautiful as always. The Final Fantasy community is so wonderful, so kind. I haven't actually finished Final Fantasy VIII. I'm playing the original. I backlogged it on my PS2, so I'm doing like the 4 disc, and I'm actually at Ultimacia's castle, so I haven't actually finished the game, but I heard that the boss music for Ultimacia is really good, so that is like my motivator to finish this game. No spoilers. After the shoot, I actually got some photos down at like the ground level of Katsucon, and ironically it was really windy that day, so I got some very dramatic videos of the cosplay, and I also got these shots from in the hall as well, and your girl is happy. Your girl feels bossed up and slay. Also great, I didn't see any Safer cosplays, which is great because I don't like Safer. Some quick takeaways if you do decide to do this cosplay. I did alter the front part of the helmet so that it wouldn't dig into my forehead as much. That did help, but not fully. I could only wear this helmet for about 4 hours before I had to take it off. One thing you could do is just order the pieces for the helmet and make the helmet yourself, or you could make the helmet completely yourself. It's up to you, but I'm just letting you know that the one-size-fits-all thing, you're gonna run into problems, at least if you have the similar face shape as I do. And the other cool thing is that you can hide Crocs under this cosplay. Again, I probably will be remaking that crest. All right. So thank you so much for getting to the end of this video, and I hope that you, yes you, have a wonderful day.